Hi everyone, well welcome back to the studio today. Today for our watercolor exercise or our watercolor assignment for the week, we're going to be doing a warm focused painting and a cool focused painting. So you're going to learn how to work with analogous palettes. You might already know what that is, but you can really learn to, if you've already done it, then this is kind of an exercise where you can hone in your skills. If you're not sure, this is an opportunity for you to look at color very specifically and learn how to control it in a very close window, okay? Get your color mixing again. We're really getting our nuances going. We built from a grayscale black and white mixing onto neutral mixing with a little bit of temperature so we could see ourselves slowly build into that color bias and that temperature bias, which creates space. And then moving forward into warm and cool relationships, we can start to look at how those affect the overall mood of the painting. You can think of Monet with that Rouen Cathedral or the haystacks, where he was really focusing on time of day. If you have that cool light of the morning or that warm light of sunset, how he could keep those colors really close to affect the overall mood and again, time of day, okay? I'll be working today with a series of clouds. And so this can be very, I like clouds because they're kind of organic, well, they're very organic, and they can be interpreted multiple ways. Skies are a beautiful thing to paint. You can take that subject as well, or you can move into another form of landscape. You can work abstractly. Some of you, if you like working with objects, these exercises will go with objects as well. But I'm gonna be switching over to landscape-inspired subject matter, okay? So again, to review, bringing out that color wheel again, if you're doing analogous colors, that means they're very close. I'll switch over to this side. They're close to each other on the color wheel. So not red, that would be considered warm, but if you kind of turn the color wheel this way, split it down the middle, this side is gonna ring cooler, while this side is gonna ring warmer or gonna lean that way, okay? We also do have warm and cool bias within each color, but we're not gonna focus on that much today. We're just gonna focus on overall palette, okay? So if I pick something here, I'm leaning cool. If I pick something here, I'm leaning warm, okay? So you're gonna have one of each, so you wanna pay attention to that. Okay, well, without further ado, we're gonna get to painting. See you in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about source imagery. Apologies in advance for the air conditioner in the back. We're still at the end of the heat wave. I will be time-lapsing a bit, so that will take the noise out slightly. So if you can't, sometimes with my videos, if there's some background noise, feel free to close caption, and that way you can see what I'm saying as well. Okay, so I said that one palette should be on the warmer side, one should be on the cooler side. There's a subtle difference here, but to me it's drastic enough that we can play with it. So here I have that warm orange, oranges and pinks and reds. Again, I can lean them some different directions, so I can make this sky look like that. Here it's pink leaning, but I can kind of actually put it into the, watch this, kind of a red-violet zone, because pink sometimes comes from the red violet, as you can see. So once I move it close, you can see that this exists more here, okay? So subtle, they're kind of close, but they're still on the dividing side of the color wheel, okay? So what I'm gonna do, these are relatively simple compositions. I took my watercolor page, my large one, I'm gonna have one on the top and one on the bottom. Sometimes I like to do that, and then I can use my paper cutter, cut them out and frame them nicely. As you can see, it's just really, these are kind of simple. So it's just a quick horizon line. I can kind of figure out where I want that to be for my clouds. And then I'm gonna rely on washes. Here, we've got a couple more. So we've just got the base. And sometimes I just kind of rough that in. I can actually make this a nice little bleed. It doesn't have to be specific, because the nice thing about watercolor is that drawing media looks really nice on it. So once it dries, so you can deal with washes first, and then once it dries, you can go in with some sharper brushes and details, and you can actually make a crisp edge. You won't be able to see me do that today because I'm gonna go with washes and bleeds more than crisp detailed edge. But in another demo, we'll talk a little bit more about detailing when things are dry, or take some older pieces and then put those details on a dry surface. So that would work as well, okay? So let me go ahead and pick out the paint that I want for this. I'm gonna go with some basics. I'm gonna start with some ultramarine blue. This would be for this image. This is all gonna be on the cool leaning. So again, I'm grabbing cool leaning paint. I'm switching over to gouache a little bit to mix with my watercolor. Not usually customary, but I'm doing that because I have a better tube of that than I do watercolor. You can mix the two, just FYI. Oh, actually, I take that back. There's my watercolor. Never mind. Keep it watercolor and watercolor, okay? I am gonna use my little tin today too. Let's see, I'm also gonna pull out some quinacridone magenta. I'm gonna grab that lunar black just in case I need to really gray something down. But honestly, that should do it. See, look what I've got here. This is like a gray green that I'm seeing right here. Again, ultramarine blue will be fine just to mix with the quinacridone magenta. And then this gives kind of a pinky color. I do see some oranges in there. I'll keep it handy just in case. And I can actually use Indian yellow. That will work because Indian yellow has a bit of a orange tint to it. I don't know. Yeah, so I can actually go with that if I want to get a couple of those little highlights there. Okay, so let me go ahead and get some of these colors out. The ultramarine I'm gonna put here. My ultramarine is a little bit dry. Let's see, it's gotten a little crusty, but maybe we'll cut the tube. So I'm gonna pause for a second. Okay, I did the typical cut the tube from the side trick. And then we'll put that. What I do, if I do something along those lines with older paint that's crusted at the top, I'll just put it in a plastic baggie so that the whole thing doesn't dry out. Let's see, so we got the magenta. Let's do the black at the edge here. Again, these are a little older. So you'll see sometimes my washes are a little funky because that's that, but I do my best. I'm gonna put my permanent green light there. Let's see what I have here. This is a Windsor green. Let me just look at this one real quick because it might be more what I want. Yeah, there we go. That's a better green for what I'm after. That other green's a little too light. So Windsor green works nicely. I'm gonna go ahead and put my white over here. Okay, and then this yellow. I'm gonna actually grab one more painting tin so that I can mix separately. And I'll put this. Now the lower piece is this image, and then the upper piece will be the warm. Okay, and again, this is really going to rely heavily on washes. I won't necessarily time lapse. I will talk you through it because I realize this will go kind of quickly. But this is just going to be the kind of color contrast relying on washes to kind of build. We'll just do darker and then a little baby bit of value contrast. You can see there's not a ton of value contrast in either one of these. There's something at the edge here, and then this kind of exists more in a mid-tone situation with the brightness being here. So let me grab that other painting tin. Okay, so let's start with the bottom one. And what I'm gonna do here is I actually like to do my washes. I'm gonna do a wet wash, which I like to do with skies. So just so you see, I go ahead and when I say wet wash, I'm going to dip into the water, blot onto I have my little painting rag right here to the side, blot onto the painting rag, and that's kind of working wet onto wet. I don't have my colors mixed yet, so I wanna do that first. So I'm gonna grab my palette knife. And for this white, this kind of sky wash here, let's just go ahead with some quinacridone magenta. Okay, so this is I'm holding the paint over here, and I'm gonna do some mixing over here in this little messy palette. Kind of a bit crazy. Okay, so the tiniest bit of quinacridone magenta is gonna make that. This, I'm gonna kind of, I don't usually do that. I usually do white of the page, but I am gonna kind of put a little bit of white into this quinacridone right now, so that I can kind of get this pinkier, smokier feel. Also, I'm gonna blend right together in the wash. I'm gonna actually take that ultramarine blue and I'm gonna move that over here. Okay, again, this stuff's super dry, so it's not really gonna get into it. We'll get rid of that, okay? But I'm gonna take that ultramarine blue. It's kind of a dusky color, so I might even put the tiniest bit of lamp black in it. Okay, so just a tiny bit. Now these are real subtle washes, so I don't wanna go too crazy with color. And so I've got this right here. That's gonna be my pinky blood sky, okay? So first, I'm gonna go ahead and put my water down. Okay, again, later on in the course, we'll be working with some mixed media. We'll be working with some resist. I just haven't brought that out yet. It's not really necessary, but when we're thinking about mark making and texture, I'm gonna do that, okay. So I'm still gonna use my big brush and I'm just gonna, this is my nicest watercolor brush, and I'm just gonna kind of use this for now. And while it's still wet, I'm gonna grab the tiniest bit of the ultramarine and I'm gonna kind of bleed it in, okay? This is my smoky background look. And you can see, I just really, according to this and this, you really don't need that much. It's just kind of a whisper, but it's gonna give me a base. Okay. Go. Again, it's a little lighter here. So if you wanna take the paint away, you get the water off the brush, or you take the pigment away, I should say. Take a little bit of the water off the brush, called a bit of a dry brushing technique, and that will actually take that away from you. Sorry, I take a little bit of the pigment away for you. Okay, so you see I've got that going on there. Okay, down lower, now I did reserve this edge because here, lower, if you can see, this is a little bit darker, smokier. So why don't I go ahead and edge to edge, and I'm gonna put a little more water down. Watercolor washes are so much fun. So I'm gonna leave a little bit, try not to get it too close. And then I'm gonna actually work from here to here so that I can keep this edge kind of clean right now. Okay. And this time, I'm still gonna use that ultramarine, but I'm just gonna try to get a little bit more of that lamp black in there. Okay, again, I'm working with a cool palette. That's why it's blue heavy. Okay, so we see this is kind of a bluish gray. Probably could afford a tiny bit more of the lamp black, so I'm gonna go back up to my original palette. I'm just trying to be subtle. So I'm changing the value baby slightly. Okay. Moving up to my edge here, and now when I get there I can kind of blend a little bit, let them blend together. But I like having, you can kind of see there's a bit of a shift, and I kind of want to show that, okay? Want it to be a blended sky, but I also want to show, you know, there was a shift here. It's not so much here. That's blended, so I'm going to dab my brush and blend that here. But right about here, I do kind of want to show where there's an edge. Right up to it. Kind of let that edge. Okay, there we go. While we're still at this phase, I'm gonna now again work from the top. It's still kind of wet. And now I'm gonna put my pinky wash over. Like I said, I'm not gonna worry too much about, we've got a little bit of the oranges. I might just get, you know, a soft round brush. You can see something like that. That's not good, I don't like the handle on that one. Some of these are older and the handles are, okay, that one works. So here I might go in and just kind of make some variation of the color, but I'm trying to get that pink to go up here, okay? So I'm gonna again put just the tiniest bit of water on my brush, not too much, it's just to get that paint flowing. and not everything, so we're not gonna have dry paint going on the wash, but we do have to make sure, I might just pull it out there a little bit, that I'm not just getting too much pigment, okay? That's probably enough. I can actually blend from here, okay? So again, I'm even leaning cooler than the photograph right now because I want this to be a cool interpretation, okay? And it's great, I did it fast enough that it's going right into the blue. And now I really need to get all the pigment off so that I can just kind of blend it like a whisper. Top. And some of this guy underneath, or the wash underneath, I'm gonna leave. There we go. Nice little sky. And like I said, for some of this little brighter contrast watch, again, I don't want to change the palette too much. Okay, so I'm gonna grab just the tiniest bit of this Azo yellow. I'm sorry, this is a Indian yellow, which you can see leans mildly orange. Just the tiniest bit so that it still stays a cool orange. Or, I mean, if nothing else, just even more pink. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead with that smaller brush, and I'm gonna kind of come in here. And still while it's really wet, color variation. I can sometimes like to put it down like that and then get my bigger brush and move it. My bigger, softer brush. Do you like working with the big brushes? Again, I kind of left an edge here on purpose. Just FYI, I can blend it in a little bit more so we get the softness of the sky, but I kind of did that. You know, sometimes with watercolor, I take a few little liberties. You know, kind of let the paint work for me. So just, to me, if I just add some of those areas of depth, it just makes it a little less boring. Okay? But mine, like I said, the colors that I'm picking, they are taking some liberties. They are cooler than what is photographed, okay? And maybe putting a little there to highlight something a little bright, fun, kind of blending it in. Okay, that's good. So you can see the paper's very wet washes. I'm gonna kind of let that settle. So now, last thing is I want to slightly pull down this little grayish sky area. Okay. Just gonna, oops, not too much. Pull this down a little bit more. Okay, a little grayer. Pull it down. Bleed it one more time. Okay. And then I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. I see here this edge I made a little bit harsher. Again, I have okay watercolor paper, so I can kind of work back into it. If it's not good watercolor paper or not designed for watercolor, it doesn't allow you to do this, just FYI. But I see how the edge dried harshly. I can actually work back in. That's kind of nice. Okay. And I am actually gonna let this sit because the contrast that I want to pull up through this lower one. Okay, so this down here, I want to be able to see some details. I want that, you know, to be a little more defined. Okay. Great. Okay, so this kind of nice, again, inspired by, I let mine be a little bit cooler. And the reason I did that is because up here, I really want the contrast. I'm actually going to switch to the other one because I'm going to let that sit for a minute. So I'm going to actually switch to this one. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I will actually I'm going to get a nice base. I'm still going to use my, use the technique here, wet onto wet. So I'm going to wet this down, get a nice blue toned kind of flat bleed there. And then I'm going to play with this. So some of the movement that I have in the sky here, I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to keep it a little more flat. And then I'm gonna actually add some variation into the lower part, okay? So in this particular situation, the base blue is kind of similar, although this whole composition overall is going to be warmer. Again, gonna add a little bit of black to that. Oops, sorry, actually let me take that off. Got my little bleed. Apologies, forgot my bleed. So water, start with some water, wetting the area, masking the area. And then I'm gonna take this blue, tiniest bit, okay. Again, gray blue is what I'm looking for, and that's gonna help me get away with this not being cool. It's you know, it's a little neutral. Honestly, if I took a phthalo blue, which is a warmer blue, that would kind of let me get away with, yeah, that's good. It's not, it's more neutral blue or like a gray blue than it is cool, right? So that's what I'm looking for. And I'm gonna actually, while it's wet on wet, get it just a value darker. I don't want this to be so light. Not as light as the other sky. The other sky is light sky, contrasting horizon. This is kind of more of a mid-light sky with contrasting clouds. Okay? So I do want to make sure at this stage that I get, that's perfect, very flat. Okay. Maybe even a little bit darker than that. And as you're going to see, I do kind of take some liberties with value, with color, because in the end, I want the composition to work. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Nice big brush there. Very soothing. Okay. Go. There's that. And then I'm actually going to take a little bit of the pigment off and go in here, and there's a couple areas where there's lighter sky. And I'm going to kind of get those in now. Oops. So my pink from the other thing came in. That happens. That's okay. We'll just work with it. Don't be like me. Get different brushes. Not a messy brush. I need to go pick up another one because I kind of rely on this one a little heavily. Okay. There we go. That's what happens when you rely on one brush. It's starting to pick up the paint. Okay, and I will take a rag at this point. Kind of move that around. There we go. That's pretty. As you can see, when it dries in these little chunks on the white, it's such a pretty little effect. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and touch this down here. Yep, that seems fine. It's a little drier. It has buckled somewhat, so that means that it's not entirely dry yet. This also is an indication that my paper isn't the fanciest. If it's a heavier weight, it won't do the little curling. But again, maybe when I do a mid-semester restock or something like that, I'll go get the fancy stuff because I don't like the buckling myself. So now you can see down here, what I'm going to do is actually, I'm just gonna map out, so there's like this little horizon and it's more detailed, okay? But I'm gonna map out the darker parts, and I'm just gonna kind of do it, like they're almost gonna be blobby shapes. And then that will give me that room to go in later and maybe add some different details. And you can sometimes do that with a small brush. If you're like mixed media, you can do it with marker. But in this composition, we had this kind of smoky, ethereal sky. It's very cool. And then we have this dark, just minimal horizon. It's kind of an abstract composition, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up that color. What is that color? Well, remember how I pulled out this darker? This is a cooler green. So this is a Windsor green. A phthalo green can work. And then I am actually going to put black into that as well. You can see that up here. Okay, and what I'm getting myself is then a cool shadow, okay? Go ahead, now if you can see, oops, sorry. Let me move that into the screen. Get this one up here. Okay, and then I'm gonna move that to the side and see I like that. I do, okay? So again, that's the difference between a cool and warm shadow. What if I wanted a warm shadow? Well, that you can do with reds, okay? Reds will, or violets sometimes will give you like a warmer shadow, okay? So one of the things that I'm doing, as you can see, we have the little palm tree and stuff like that, but I'm kind of just putting an area where it's indicated, general shape, and that way I have this base. If we try to go into the detail too quickly, it doesn't feel like there's full coverage, okay? So I'm basically putting a spot where the plants belong, letting it bleed out slightly. Again, if you don't reserve some of the gaps, that's fine. You can use white to make them exact. Just depends on how much realism you want, okay? I'm kind of good with the essence of and then details where they matter. That's kind of the way that I go. So if you can see down here, I know it's a little bit at a distance, but I'm giving the essence of the palm tree, okay? But the key to me is kind of value matching, interesting shapes. That really, to me, carries the piece more than anything. Is the horizon line interesting? Do we like it? Okay, how did we build up this space? Okay. Okay. And so in this particular piece, as you can see, there's areas where there's lighter and darker in the shadow, but you do want to make sure that it's contrasting with the horizon. That's really key, okay? That's what I'm trying to do for sure, is make sure that this value down here is drastically different from the sky, or, you know, a couple shades darker, I should say. Oh. Again, kind of pulled that up a little bit. Okay, so where there's details of a palm tree, I'm just basically taking the edge of my brush and just fanning real lightly. If you're not sure, you can use less paint rather than more, use more water, give yourself a sense of that. And so, like I said, I like to start with the general shape and then come in after it dries and put details where they are necessary. So you can see that the key here, again, is that lovely, and I'm making some adjustments, you know, making my horizon line look the way that I want it to look. See, this key is just kind of contrast. It's like how the washes line up, staying cool. Also thinking about color, not trying to match what I see in the photograph, okay? But trying to stay within a palette range so that my colors make sense, okay? Even though this is a little warmer here, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably make that kind of pinky. Yeah. Okay. These ones, again, for that kind of, this tree here, which is just really, again, these are on the redder side, so I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna add actually a little bit, so it's kind of like a red gray. I'm gonna actually add that to the mixture, the little bit of the quinacridone, okay, and then work on those trees. I think to get that really kind of dead tree lacy feel, I'm also paying attention to negative space. I'm actually, as I do this, going to kind of put some water on the edge. And that's gonna give me some liberties as well as to how I wanna deal with this when it dries, okay? So, kind of a combination of techniques I'm doing here. Put some art in there. Again, just varying the dark to light. playing with those edges so that I can give them detail. Like I said, detail where it counts. Okay, you don't always see everything, but you see some of it. Again, this is kind of a nice detail. Oh, putting a little bit more of that red in there. And again, because I'm mixing the red into the gray, it's already kind of, the green, it's already giving it this kind of gray look or effect. Okay. It's building. Now see, that's the nice part right there. It's a little darker. So this is this tiny snippet of a horizon, but there's just so much going on, and it makes for such an interesting composition. You know, there's so much activity in that fun little horizon there. Okay. Greenish, more greenish here, or even that lighter. Bring that down with a bit more of a wash. Again, I'm taking some color liberties there. That's not exactly what I see, but again, it's better to overpaint a little bit and then come back with some sharper details than to leave too many gaps, because that will make the piece look less complete. So there's kind of a difference between using the wide of the page and then gaps where you just didn't paint close enough. That just doesn't work. Okay, so even here, I might even tend to bleed or bring it up. So I'm just not dealing with empty space for no reason, okay? And then this last little bit over here, again, that's okay, that's a little white here, because I've kind of got a highlight coming up. And then of course, as it dries a little bit, I'll be working into here and adjusting. I can actually kind of go in and put some of those colors in. But this one I will want to build a little bit as it dries, as you can see. Here, that's actually just a good gray-green situation. That's right there. And switching over to that quinacridone. Again, bleeding that in, giving myself a nice little, So you can even see with kind of an abstract, very simple horizon, how I did take my time to think about the edges. I'm not making it arbitrary. I'm making these shapes count, and that's key, okay? So that's once I build on it, that's gonna feel like a more articulate space, right? Because it's got this contrast, there's like this kind of light coming up from the back. There's edges that make sense. Okay, again, the key is not making it arbitrary. Okay, so this is cool. Again, I'm leaving out some of the warmer aspects of this and keeping this piece cool. Okay, now I'm gonna switch over to, and let this dry. So this again is a base, and then you can build on top of that. That's a decent base. The washes sit nicely. I've got some pretty crisp edges here. Okay, I'm gonna move back over to the top one. Okay, and now, so let me switch my palette over so I don't wanna mess these things up. This I'm actually gonna create, I can use let me pull this up. So I can use that Indian yellow there. Again, it has an orange bent. I can use the same color I have out, so you can see a lot of this is interchangeable. And I can use the quinacridone magenta, and I can actually, with those two, make a nice range of oranges and pinks and things like that, So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of start, and I'm just gonna treat it as washes for now. So I'm gonna start first with the alizarin crimson. I'm not gonna worry about a washy base as much here because I'm just gonna kind of build it liberally. Okay. So we've got pinks. Gonna kind of reserve a little white of the page there. Okay, so I can really come in with that yellowy pop. And these are clouds, so one of the things with the brush marks or the brush strokes is that you want to kind of feel cloud-like, okay? There we go. There we go. Now you can see that the colors feel very similar right now, so that requires me to go in with that yellow pop and that warmer pop. So that all feels cool, and now I gotta get in there with this one, okay? So that's gonna warm it right up. See the minute that I do that? Okay, if it hits the blue sky, it's gonna turn a little green there. So this might be an instance where I am gonna use some white to kind of pop up, give those lips. Okay, but see how it does, it turns kind of greeny. So you really wanna blend, if you're blending on the page, you're trying to blend that Indian yellow. Let's get a little more of that pinky. So you're trying to blend that Indian yellow with the quinacridone magenta, okay? Don't try to blend it with the blue, it's just gonna turn green, okay? So if you're doing that quick wet onto wet blending on the page, that's the one you wanna do. And then you can see down here, there's like these purples and there's kind of gray areas, but the blue that I have underneath is kind of taking care of that for me, right? If I want more of that effect, then all I have to do while it's still wet is go back into the blue areas, and I can just really use my ultramarine, and that's gonna kind of blend nicely with that blue and red makes purple. So that's gonna blend nicely. And it's basically just giving me some depth, wet on wet. I'm gonna kind of leave that for now because it really gives that kind of feeling of the storm cloud, the way that it looks currently. Again, just that tiny bit of the, oops, so daisy, I don't know where that came from. Just that tiny bit of the warmer yellow just really changed this palette. So that does also tell me don't do it here because that's gonna change the overall feeling of this piece. So if I go back into this one, let's say I use some whites mixed with my quinacridone magenta. Let's go ahead and do that. I haven't used white much in the last pieces, so I'll do that here. So if I'm gonna do that in this sky, let's say, I'm gonna keep it pinky, okay? So I did kind of mix the quinacridone magenta, put a little bit more into this one, okay? It's like I wanna kind of enhance that sky slightly. Just feels a little boring at this point. Get a little more weight for that one. Really keep it on the pale side. And again, to add more water so that it's watercolor, I'm gonna go over to this tub over here, okay? And it's dry enough now that I can get kind of a really nice, again, it's not exactly what you see here, but that's a really pretty kind of pinky color, a little more opaque, and start to bring some depth to the sky. And I can decide here, do I want to blend it up? Do I want to bleed it through? I'm going to keep some edges because edges can look like clouds a little bit. Okay, so as I build this composition, I will bleed it slightly. Okay. Also areas of almost just pure white or white-ish as I bleed it up. And this one's a little more, it's gonna be more of an opaque one. It's okay though, because it's kind of, seems like there's clouds or haze, okay? So if you're using white when there's clouds or haze, that makes sense, you know? This one I'm gonna keep transparent and cleaner because kind of more the feel of that one, okay? So you can see edge to edge when I did one edge over the other, where they meet, where the colors meet, I'm getting that sense of a cloud. That's really nice, okay? Again, I do kind of want to address this edge down below here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my ultramarine blue, add a little bit of black to that. Okay, and this one too, let me go ahead and get my palette knife a little bit. Let's just pull a little bit of white into this mixture as well. Okay, so that's that lower. So the nice thing about watercolor is you add the white, that makes it a little more opaque, but you can also add water, so you can control the value when you're doing that, okay? So, again, I'm gonna enhance what I see in the picture here. Maybe a little bluer, maybe not, So let's go ahead. Go. Get a bigger brush. Hold on. And then bleed it up slightly. And this way, by doing this, why am I doing this? So I get this kind of crisp edge from the trees that are already there. I can darken the gradient a little bit. So you can see it kind of went dark as I got on there, but as I bleed it up, it starts to make sense. See how it works? And don't be afraid to kind of go up against your edges, because that's just gonna either bleed them out a little bit more or enhance them. Okay, and then here, this is gonna need to be built up slightly as well. Okay, so I will have to, that edge is gonna need to be, I would like it, I'm gonna layer it more so it's just a little less transparent is kind of what the outcome I'm gonna want from this one. And like I said, you find areas where you want, like this pole, I'm gonna wait for this to dry before I do the details, like those fine electric wires and things like that. Okay, but as you can see, I'm kind of putting darker contrast. I'm just actually even using the edge of the brush in some situations. Just a sharp brush. I'm doing that, and I'm doing it against the washes. Okay, so you get this kind of textured depth. Just grab some, a little more opaquely. Bleed slightly, that's fine. Kind of see how a layer underneath really does help with that, okay? Pull that up a little bit more if you can see it. Well, maybe you can see it. Zoom in with your camera. Okay, and then again, let's show you another area where I can go in here. It's a little dry, so I can, again, if I go like this, I can give the illusion of just using a sharp edge of a brush, and I'm giving kind of the illusion, just dabbing it on there to give that illusion of upright trees. It's kind of a fun way to put detail in. Okay, so really use the brush to your advantage. Big ones for washes, these sharper edge, kind of play with the idea of detail, things like that. Okay, this one I'd let sit for a minute and then kind of decide what I want as far as the sky is concerned. I really love where it's at now, probably a couple little opaque layers there. Okay, but you can see, again, one that is leaning a little bit warmer, one that's leaning cooler, and I did take some liberties with colors so that I could keep this palette going one direction and this palette going another direction. Okay, that is all for now. Again, if you get to this point with yours, you can take that, I can let this dry, take it a lot further, come back, add some more detailed sections, but this again is a good base with some layering on top. So feel free to take this any way you want. If you want to add some colored pencil, if you want, any drawing or anything that you want to do to these, you can do as well. Okay, that is all for today. Enjoy painting, or happy painting, I should say. Well, that's all for today. I hope you really enjoyed diving into color study, looking at warm and cool relationships, or just color in general. And I will see you next time in the studio with some new exercises and new tutorials.